So today's story is by request of my husband. This is one of my stories that he likes, and he wanted me to share this story. And so I was from birth to 8 years old. We lived in a very little town, one of those where everybody kind of knew everybody, and as children, we were allowed to wander the neighborhood. We could go probably several block radius of our home because moms didn't work outside the home hardly ever. Back then they were homemakers. And so there was always some mom could see you out of her kitchen window. If your mom couldn't see you, somebody else's mom could. So we were kind of being supervised by the whole little town, And yet there were some places and some things we weren't supposed to do without permission. Now, I don't think that our parents were worried that somebody was going to steal us or hurt us like that or anything. Not back in those days. I mean, it doesn't mean things like that didn't happen, because things did happen, but people didn't really talk about it. It wasn't on the news. And when you're in a little town and everybody knows everybody, most people didn't even lock their doors. I don't think they worried about that. But they wanted to know where we were and we could get hurt. And so there were some boundaries, not like what they would have today. So there was this place called Honda Hills, and it was a dirt bike path and with little hills and jumps and things. And they used to go race dirt bikes there. And so we were not supposed to go to Honda Hills without permission, because if there was racing going on, they didn't want us going because it would be too dangerous. And usually I think our mom would go with us, because we'd take our bikes and ride on the dirt bike paths, and even that could be dangerous. And, somebody could get hurt and you were back behind the houses where people couldn't really see you. So it just wasn't, we weren't allowed to go there without supervision. Well, my little brother and I were playing with my friend Vicky from 2 doors down. And there was this little mom and pop store on the corner 2 blocks over from our house. You could see it from our house, called Dot and Dash. It was owned by this man and his wife. I don't know what their names were, but in our little minds, we thought their names were Dot and Dash. So it was Mrs. Dot and Mr. Dash. That's who we thought they were, that owned the store. And in this store, they sold all kinds of little things, but the only thing we were really interested in was the candy. And they had gotten in a shipment of blue popsicles. Now, to most people today, it's like big deal. But back then, we'd never seen blue popsicles in our life. We had no idea. Oh, they looked so beautiful, and we wanted to try those blue popsicles. But they were very expensive, 2 pennies each. That meant we had to have 6 pennies. I think back to times like that and think, wow, how could that even be real? But it was. So we needed 6 pennies, and we didn't have any pennies. Well, at Honda Hills, one of the reasons we liked to go there was we'd take our wagon and we would fill it up with all the empty pop bottles that people left behind after they were watching people race. Then we'd take them to Dot and Dash, cash them in, and our mom would let us buy some candy with it. Well, we knew all we had to do, because I think we got like maybe 5 cents a bottle. All we had to do was go and get 2 bottles, and we would have our 6 pennies and then some to get the blue popsicles. So we had tried to ask my mom. We had gone in, but she was busy doing something, and we couldn't, she was on the phone or something. I don't know, but we couldn't interrupt her. And, so we had to wait. Well, we got tired of waiting, and we got this idea. We only need 2 pop bottles. We can go to Honda Hills, get 2 pop bottles, over to Dot and Dash, cash them in, get 3 popsicles, eat them, and be home before anybody even knows we've been gone. And to our little kid brains, we weren't even in school yet, but to our little kid brains, we thought, that made sense. Sure, that's what we'll do. So we took our wagon. Like, we only needed 2 pop bottles, but we always took our wagon. And so we got to Honda Hills, and there were a lot of bottles. Oh, there was a lot of bottles. So we started loading up the wagon. And we loaded up Vicky's arms, and we loaded up my arms, and we had my little brother trying to pull that wagon, and we were having to push it with our legs from behind to help him keep it moving because it was heavy. And we got over to Dot and Dash, and Mrs. Dot, she cashed in our pop bottles and gave us our money. And we had, for little kids, we had a lot of money. And we were like, we wanted to buy the popsicles, but now we've got all this money. We can buy a bunch of candy too. So she was keeping track for us, and we were buying up candy, and we got our blue popsicles, and we were so excited. And so she gave us our bag of candy, and we went out onto the sidewalk there, and decided we'd just sit on the curb there. It was a main road that all the log trucks came down, and we used to like to sit there, and you'd pull your hand up and down, and they'd honk their horn, and we'd get so excited and thrilled and laugh and squeal, and and it, for a little kid that was pretty exciting. So here we are sitting on the curb, and we open up our blue popsicles, and we take the first bite all together, and then we spit them out into the gutter. They were nasty tasting. They looked great, didn't taste very good at all. So I guess that was before they perfected the recipe for blue popsicles. So instead, we sat there and started to eat our candy. And we were laughing and joking, and I remember we were eating some Milk Duds. I don't even know if they make those anymore, but they were a really sticky candy, and so we would, it was a warm summer's day, and we'd bite down into them, and then it would hold our teeth, and then we'd have to pry our mouths open, and we were laughing, thinking that was so funny, and, it was, and time just kind of marched on, and we were not aware of what was going on until I saw somebody move, coming down the street, and I looked up, and there was our mom, eyes fixed on us. She still had her apron on. She didn't even bother to take her apron on. And here she comes, heading towards us. And I'm like, and I kind of tap Vicky and tap Brad, and we all look up, and it's like, we are in so much trouble. She was not happy with us. She had, when she'd looked out the kitchen window and couldn't see us anymore, she just called down to Vicky's mom and thought maybe we'd gone down to her house, but no, she hadn't seen us. And so my mom started calling around the neighborhood, and nobody had seen us for a long time. Nobody knew where we were. So it had panicked my mother. Well, I'm sure she was relieved, but she was angry when she saw us sitting there with all that candy. And we were on a sugar high and a half, let me tell you. So she marched us home and told us never to ever do that to her again. She figured out when she got there, because she was like, where have you guys been? And we're like, trying to think of a story really quick, and we couldn't. And she's like, well, I see the wagon. I see the candy. I assume you went to Honda Hills, got a bunch of pop bottles, came, cashed them in, and been eating your fill. And so it was kind of like, yeah. So she marched us home, and I know that my brother and I don't know what happened to Vicky, but my brother and I, we were sent to bed without dinner that night, which was fine, because believe me, we weren't feeling so good after all that candy anyway. And I don't know, we might have got a spanking, I don't know, but I know we never did that again. So my husband, he loves this story, and he had said the other day, you need to tell, that Honda Hill story, you need to tell that story. And I'm like, why? What's the life lesson in that? Don't go buy blue popsicles, don't overeat candy, what? And he's like, no. He goes, when you tell that story, it makes me think of how, first off, we always get these bright ideas and think nobody will ever know and that we'll get away with it. But he goes, somehow somebody finds out, somebody talks, and we don't really usually get away with stuff. And he goes, people need to know that as much as you think, especially young people, that, it's not going to hurt anything and it's no big deal. I mean, so many things could have gone wrong that day, and God was with us and protected us, and I'm sure had us surrounded by angels. But that thought that we could get there, do this, and be back before anybody even knew anything happened. Well, hours had gone on. It was dinner time by the time my mom finally found us. And because I'm sure she had been walking the neighborhood and all, and probably when she was coming back, she saw us sitting down there on the curb. But you're not going to get away with stuff. You just aren't. At some point, somebody's going to find out. And there's always a consequence to our actions. But I thought even more so as I was, talking to my husband, listening to him talk about it. Jesus said that a shepherd, a good shepherd, loves his flock. And if he even has 100 sheep and one goes wandering off, he'll leave the 99 and go search for that one to bring it back to safety. And, and I thought, this kind of looks like that to me too. Because there have been times I've wandered off and God's left everything, as is, and gone after me, pursued me, found me to bring me home. And yes, sometimes he doesn't come out angry, mad, like I'm going to find you and I'm going to make you pay. Some people think he does. He doesn't. I've never known God to be that way. He's not always pleased. See, even my mom wasn't, I'm going to get you. I'm sure the thought probably crossed her mind, but we were her children and she loved us. And she was just so glad to have us back. But she did discipline us so that we wouldn't do that again. And sometimes God does discipline us to get our attention so we don't do it again. But he's not striking out in anger or wanting to destroy us because we wandered off. No, he cares and he comes after us and he brings us back. So maybe you've kind of strayed off. He'll bring you back. Maybe you need to be disciplined, like I've needed to be disciplined to get our attention so that we don't do this anymore. You'll be disciplined with love when it comes to God. Doesn't mean it's not going to cost you or that it's not going to hurt to some degree, because we're disciplined to whatever degree we need to be disciplined to get our attention. My parents had 3 children and they disciplined us not always the same because we didn't respond the same. I had a brother that they had to, this sounds awful, but they had to beat it into him. They had to go over and over and over things with him and, really, get it to sink into him. And then I had another brother that they had to keep taking things, privileges and stuff away to get his attention. And with me, if they even just said they were disappointed in me, it devastated me. So we all responded differently. If they spanked me, I wanted to fight them. I don't know what kind of a little kid I was, but my mom said, you wanted to fight. But I think that was, being with those brothers. They'd punch me, I'd punch them back. So, God knows you and he knows what you need in order for him to get your attention. And he loves you and he wants you in the safety of his care. And so that, and don't think you're going to get away with it. There's even scripture, go look for yourself, that says God will shine light on what you're doing in the darkness and expose your secret deeds to make sure that we get the discipline we need, not because he's out there trying to do wrong to us, but because he's trying to save us. And my mom was not trying to be mean to us that day. She wanted to save us from the dangers we could have so easily been in. So there's something to think about today. All right. I hope these videos are touching you in some way, challenging you in some way, encouraging you in some way, that they're doing a work in your heart and that you're getting something from them. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so that when I put a new one up tomorrow, you'll know it's there and you can see it. And I hope you have a great day. I love you because Jesus loves you. I love you too. And I will talk to you later.